Chap Petersen is with us, state senator, Northern Virginia. He's his own man. Sometimes he goes with the party, sometimes he doesn't. He does what he thinks is right. That's why I'm a big fan of his. Always have been. He's a clear thinker. He's a business guy, runs a business, got a burgeoning law firm. Since he's been advertising with us, business has exploded. We tried to tell that. We tried to tell that to
man.
Bill
Cause and effect. Thank you, John.
I know,
Cause
right?
and effect.
I tried to tell that to Bill Stanley. I'm like, Bill, you too can have a big, as long firm and be successful. Chap Petersen, if you would only advertise on the John Fredericks Radio Show. Chap, great to have you with us. Boy, lots to talk about. Let's start with your op-ed. You want to finally take a stab at reforming campaign finance laws in Virginia. Explain.
Sure. Well, first of all, this has been an issue. I've been bringing bills on since I think 2008. So it's been a long time concern of mine and passion of mine. And as you undoubtedly know, at the federal level, there are limits on campaign donations, and there's a reason for that. They want to limit the influence of the very large, what I call the supersized donors, people that can give six-figure donations. And we've never had that at the state level. You can give whatever money you want. It gets disclosed, and your opponents can make what they will of it. And you know, my concern typically was sort of a traditional Democratic concern about large corporations dictating policy. You know, my orations and speeches about Dominion Power and similar companies that, shall we say, attempt to buy legislation. But anyways, the bottom line was what brought it into really a stark relief this spring was when a PAC controlled by George Soros, who's not a Virginian, has no connection to this state, dumped over $1 million into two prosecutor races in Northern Virginia, one Arlington County and the other one Fairfax County. Now, as you noted, I'm an attorney by trade. I'm in the courthouse all the time. Prosecutor races tend to be pretty sleepy affairs. You know, it's usually those folks like me that practice at the courthouse. We might have strong opinions on it, but by and large in the community, particularly a low-crime community like Fairfax County, it just doesn't generate a lot of interest. You know, the biggest high-profile prosecutions we had were probably 15 years ago with the sniper shootings. And you know, our prosecutor, Ray Morrow, was very well respected within the Bar Association, and frankly, there was never occurred to anybody that there was a controversy, and we had all this money dumped into the race in which he was portrayed as something out of, you know, Alabama in 1963, which could not have been frankly, a more false portrayal. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, Ray just didn't have the money to fight back, didn't have the campaign organization. He had Ben Tribbett helping him, and, you know, Ben tried to do the best he could, and he ended up losing by a couple points. But, you know, I was at the polls shaking hands, and people coming in saying, I can't believe you're supporting this guy, and it was just the negative mail. He just didn't have a chance to come back on it. And again, you know, it's a democracy. People win, people lose. But I didn't like the fact that somebody who had no connection to the state could just dump in so much money for misinformation. And again, those of us that live here, that have a business here, we're just not really in a position to fight back. And again, maybe that's on us, but it just, again, it brought to me the position that money can buy elections, and especially small local elections where, you know, in primaries where the turnout's going to be low. You know, $1 million can make all the difference in the world. And I just feel like, hey, every person, you know, there needs to be limits on the amount of influence one person can have, and that's where I'm coming from.
So what is exactly that you want? I mean, I get where you're coming from, and
sure.
Certainly, the catalyst of these two races in Northern Virginia with these two Commonwealth's attorney prosecutor races, I mean, it's tough to compete with somebody that's getting $500,000 from an outside source, right?
Yeah.
In a race like that, you simply can't raise that kind of money to be successful. So neither prosecutor, both of them had great track records, could really stave off that level of negative advertising, that bombardment in the mail, as you said. So, but now we've got, you know, billionaire Tom Steyer and Emily's List say they're going to pump $1 million each to help Democrats. So you're going into a cycle where the Democrats are now getting the money, right?
Yeah, well, that's the irony, John, and that is I brought this bill back in 2008, and ironically, the reason why I brought this bill, and this seems like a lifetime ago, you know, so many large donors donated money back, 15, 20 years ago. When I first got to the legislature, one of our biggest battles was over the repeal of the estate tax, which I fought against. And I felt like that was eventually eliminated, and Governor Kane signed the bill eliminating it, and I felt like that cause had been manipulated by large donations. I felt that very strongly, and that's why I brought the bill.
Right.
And so now we've kind of come complete full circle. Maybe we've done a 180, that instead of right-wing donors kind of making large donations and dictating policy choices, now maybe we have left-wing donors.
Exactly.
Again, I'm agnostic as to it. I have my own viewpoints. I just don't like the idea that someone who has no connection to our state or our jurisdiction can come in and dump these insane amounts of money. Now, look, Emily's List is a PAC. A lot of these others organizations, AFL-CIO, for example, is a PAC. The Prosperities, there's right-wing PACs,
Right.
Club for Growth, for example. And if they want to go out and, spend money and organize and canvass, sure, that's their First Amendment right. Again, my bill has to do with individual donations to candidates, which I would cap at $10,000 per cycle. I'd make it $10,000 per cycle from an individual, $20,000 per cycle from a PAC to the individual campaign. Now, if they want to go out and do grassroots organizing and voter education, or it's the same as the federal system. They could do whatever they want, but the individual candidates themselves would be limited in what they can receive. And I know everyone says, "Oh, yeah, that's our Virginia system is superior to the federal system." You know what? It's not. And again, from standing at the polls June 11th and seeing where someone who has zero connection to this state and the jurisdiction where I reside could come in and just randomly write a check and basically buy a local office, that's not a superior system. And I'm not going to defend it. And so I'm bringing my bill back in January.
So you want 10,000 limit donations
per individual.
Per individual.
Per individual candidate, yep.
And,
per individual, per two candidates.
Right. 10,000 per individual to a candidate.
Right.
And 20,000 for a PAC, for an organization.
From a PAC to a candidate.
To a candidate. So whoever it was, George Soros' PAC wouldn't have been able to give $500,000.
Yeah, they would have been capped at 20.
They would have been capped at 20,000, which would have changed the outcome of that race.
No doubt.
No question. Right?
There wouldn't have been a race.
There wouldn't have been a race. I mean, that's really the bottom line, because they would have gotten 20,000.
Or there would have been a race, but it would have been, a knocking on doors and you're sort of bringing out your friends type race.
Not just you get $500,000 and you do 10 negative mailers,
right?
Because you can blanket the area, target Democratic voters, which is what happened. But I agree with you on this, and that that if you look at the federal, right, the federal is. What, $2,500 per person, or $2,340?
Yeah, it changes. I think it's actually it's like $4,600, but it's couple, something like that.
There's a couple that you can give just under $5,000, and then a PAC can give, I think, $5,000 or $10,000. So you have those, right? You have that going on, but it doesn't make any sense to me that it never. When I came to Virginia, it was like you're in the Wild West, because people give whatever they want.
I've seen races, and I've been, by the way, recipients of very large and generous donations. Frankly, my biggest donor is my mom. Anyone who wants to go on VPAP. So that was one. That was a donation that I spent 50 years either owning or disowning, depending on how you look at it. But listen, I understand that it's a nuclear arms race out there, but you get donors that will give $500,000, $1 million bucks. And look, people have a right to spend their money. I have no problem with that. And if it's a governor's race or a U.S. it wouldn't be a U.S. senator, but governor's race, I kind of get it that each side's going to raise probably $10 million regardless. But to see someone come in at a local race and dump in this kind of money, I mean, you could theoretically. And it's almost you can get away with it in Fairfax. I think in a smaller community, for example, Fairfax City, where I live, you probably couldn't do that because, you know what, people would talk to each other. It's a small enough community that people are going to have their own opinions, and you can't buy them, through a 10-piece mail program. But Fairfax County, you got a lot of folks that are moving in, moving out, and is more susceptible to this type of negative advertising. So, regardless, look, I am willing to look at the flaws in my own legislation, I just think it would be a better system than what we have today.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if it even gets out of committee, because the problem is...
Listen, I'm sure most people that are in the legislature think that the current system favors them.
Sure.
And so they're going to vote against it. What I'm going to do is I'll file the legislation ahead of time, and I'm going to say, look, I've been in this business 20 years now, almost 20 years in the legislature. I can give you specific examples time after time after time where the level of donations has changed public policy. It's changed the type of laws that have been enacted, and not in a good way.
Right.
And I've seen this state go from Republican-dominated to potentially Democratic-dominated. Okay, so I've seen it on both sides. This is not a partisan issue. This is an issue of transparency, but it's also an issue of just, making sure that ordinary people that can't afford a donation above, say, a couple $100 or $50, or that they have some level of say in what's going on. It's not just the billionaires.
Right.
That's where I'm coming from.
Chap Petersen with us, spot on, as always. Of course, this bill is going nowhere because it makes too much sense. But look, I just want this to come to the floor, right? What aggravates me is this: your bill never gets out of committee, so they just shout it down, and then it's business as usual. I want this thing to come out of committee. I want it to go on the floor. I want it to go in the well. I want to have debate, and I want the names to go up. I want to see who's voting for the Wild West and who's finally going to say, enough of this stuff. And look, because it's on both sides. As you said, when you first talked about this, all the money was coming from the Republican side. Now it's coming from the other side. So,
right.
I mean, your view on this, Chap, has been clean, it's been pristine, and it's completely nonpartisan. It's simply the right thing to do. That what happened there in your areas with those prosecutors is real. It should be alarming to anybody, because for people to be able to come in and just buy local elections to that extent should be a concern to anybody in Virginia. So I think you're spot on with that. Chap Petersen with us, State Senator, Northern Virginia, Democrat, Fairfax, his own guy. Let's get to the special session coming up. I got two issues I want to go over: special session, guns, and just Fairfax. What's going on with that? And then I've got to get to marijuana. So we got a lot to cover in 5 minutes. Special session, guns, what are you looking for? Is it valuable or is it a waste of time?
I think it's valuable. I mean, look, you try and capture a moment, and I don't live in Virginia Beach. I know you do. I felt like what happened there, again, it's a moment in time, kind of like Virginia Tech, and I'm not saying that what bills we pass or what bills we consider could have prevented what happened, but I do believe that for us not to do anything, for us to just sort of say, hey, this happens, this is business as usual, is not acceptable. Now, the governor mentioned 7 proposals. Some of them I'm probably more in favor of than others. I think when I talked last time with you, the silencer issue, the noise suppressor, and the multi-capacity magazine, where I stand on that. Some of them, like banning guns in public buildings. Well, almost every place where one of these shootings has taken place, the guns were theoretically banned, so I'm not quite sure what that accomplishes. But we'll take them up one by one, and I applaud the governor for calling the special session. I, frankly, had reached out to him as soon as this happened, saying, I think you as the number one law enforcement officer in the state need to speak on this, and he did. So we'll see. We'll see.
When is it again?
July 9th.
July 9th, that's right, July 9th. I know it. I had that date in my mind for some reason. It's going to be July 9th.
Yeah.
Special session in Richmond. I'll be there. It'll be a lot of fun. Chap, a couple other things. Let's get to Justin Fairfax.
Yep.
My position on this is clear. He deserves due process. I know the speaker, again, called for another hearing, I believe, certainly in giving the women that have alleged the crimes, one of them serious rape, one of them sexual assault, to get their time due. But look, Eileen Filler-Corn and Caucus of the Corn is not going to go along with it. It is what it is. You're not going to change that. And so I blasted it the other day because I think it's turning into a sideshow. Look, the guy's not been prosecuted. He's not been indicted. I mean, I don't know where you go with this now. I mean, and he challenged the prosecutors. He says, indict me.
Right.
I mean, there's something wrong here when this guy's getting tried in some kind of a General Assembly tribunal. I think the whole thing is ridiculous. What say you?
Yeah, I think, look, the allegations were made. They've been made publicly. People can make of them what they want. We're not designed to be a court of law. There's no, if we invite people in to make a statement, is someone going to cross-examine them? Is someone going to, question them with prior inconsistent statements? Is someone going to ask for, physical evidence, DNA evidence?
Right.
No, of course not. We're not built for that. We don't have the ability to, collect that evidence. Nor are we. Look, we're not trying to prosecute events that happened 15, 20 years ago. So I don't know where this is all going. To me, Justin was, the way our system is built, it's innocent until proven guilty. I understand these allegations are made. I understand that some people think that they should be believed for whatever reason, and I respect that. To me personally, I don't know what happened, so I'm just not going to draw any conclusions. But the General Assembly, we need to be about representing the people of Virginia, not trying to figure out what happened in some bar in 2004. That's just my opinion.
I thought when the speaker first gave the opportunity for the two alleged victims to have a hearing and get their say, I thought if Philip Corn participated in that, that made sense. But now in a special session, I think it's turning into a clown show, and I have no interest in it. All right, final thing, Chap Petersen. Yep. This is a final thing. I just got to ask you this. I've told so many Virginia legislators who have, along with the Attorney General, softened their opposition to against marijuana in Virginia. I've told all of them I changed my position because Chap Petersen took me to dinner and walked me through for an hour and a half all the reasons why it's a gateway drug based on his personal experience. And so I'm not willing to change my position on that based upon that time you took me to dinner. And I know you remember that. It was about,
I remember
about 4
very well.
years ago, and you spent an hour and a half with me and picked up the tab. What's our position now?
Well, you know what? I just had a long meeting with, this was yesterday, a gentleman who's organized a group in Virginia called Virginia Recovery Coalition, which deals with, it's the parents of children that have become addicts. And most of them started using marijuana. And I'm not saying marijuana itself is their problem. They typically moved on to opioids, heroin, what have you. But in almost all cases, they started by smoking marijuana. Now, I know plenty of people that smoke marijuana and did not become addicted, and they've gone on to become successful adults. I get that. But to me, there's a social cost to legalizing marijuana, to making it more widespread, to making it more popular, destigmatizing it. And that's something that has to be considered. I'm not in favor of legalization. I understand the decriminalization argument, although, frankly, marijuana is decriminalized now. I mean, you only go to jail for marijuana possession if you want to, quite frankly. Every single offense is an automatic deferral in our court system. So, if we're going to have legalization, again, I'm not pushing it. I think it would have to be under very strict controls. It would have to be sold through Virginia ABC, for example, and we'd have to have a way to limit the number of users, limit the use itself. What I don't want to see is what I can already see, that for-profit marijuana companies coming into this state and ding, 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 writing big checks to legislators so they'll pass laws to open up the state like Colorado or California, where you have basically open market marijuana sales and people making a ton of money and people smoking and getting addicted.
I'm going to stay with your position. I know you've been defending people and been involved in it in your neck of the woods in Northern Virginia as a lawyer for a very long time. So I'm going to defer to you on it, and you've changed my position on it, and I'm sticking with it. You know firsthand what happens, so I'm going to stay with that. Chap Petersen, always an honor to have you on our show. Thank you, sir.
John, it's great. I'm going to be down there in about a month to come see you, so I'll get down to the beach with my family. I appreciate you letting me have some time, and shout out to your audience for listening in today.
Hey, and thank you for being a founding advertiser of the John Fredericks Show. Sometimes I forget to mention that.
One of my great investments.
9 years
Happy to do it
with us. Thank you, Chapin.
Thank you, John.
When you get to Virginia Beach, tell us when you're there, and we'll have dinner. John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America.